Hello, welcome to my webinar. Today we're going to be talking about language literacy in regards to the classroom and, early childhood learners. So we're going to go through a few things. We're going to go through phonology. We're going to talk about morphology. We're going to talk about syntax, semantics, and pragmatics. So these all impact how scholars read, how they hear sounds, how to hear words, how to even communicate and interpret, and also a little bit of comprehension. So we're going to go through a lot of the stages and how they all connect. And I'm just going to take it apart and kind of tie it all together for you so you can really understand how does language and literacy develop. So our first thought, we're going to talk about phonology. Phonology is basically how does the sound like in your ear? How do you hear it? How do scholars hear it? How do students hear it? And I noticed that for me in my classroom and how I learn to really be careful with my pronunciation is because scholars can confuse certain sounds. They may think certain words really rhyme, but it's how they're pronouncing it. So it's basically how they're saying it can determine what they really hear. So I really realized that a lot of scholars, especially my scholars who are diverse learners or my exceptional learners who take speech classes, they really kind of struggle, and it's kind of difficult for them to hear sounds because of how they're saying the sounds, and it may not sound like what they're saying and what they're hearing. The alignment between the two may have a little bit of a disconnection. Next, we're going to talk about morphology. So morphology is focusing on those prefix, those suffix, those suffix ed, those words pre and things like that, things that come before words and things that come afterwards. And I noticed that scholars are trying to say a prefix or a suffix type of word, but they're not using the ed. So what I've been practicing with my scholars is letting them say it out loud, repeat it again, and then read over their work again to get into the habit of double checking to make sure you're using the right tense when it comes to ed words. I usually see it in the second, third grade, a lot of the eds are not there and things like that. So a lot of practice is a great strategy, a lot of visuals so they can see, and a lot of reading their writing out loud, because sometimes when they're reading it in their head, they get accustomed to what they think it's supposed to sound like, versus when they hear them read it out loud, they know okay, this was a little incorrect, this was not right, maybe I should change this. Now we're going to talk about syntax, and syntax is a little bit different. It's about putting those words in order, and I like to play a little game with my scholars where I purposely say things wrong, park I go, to basically catch their attention to see what scholars are alert, what scholars are really paying attention to. Hey, Miss Andrews, that's not really correct. Maybe you should say it like this. And I know those scholars who can catch it, explain why it's incorrect, and tell me the correct way to say it are the scholars who really deeply understand the process of syntax. So I really try to catch them off guard with fun games, really try to do repetition. I really try to have them catch it in their own writing so they can start to pick up their own mistakes in regards to that. So semantics is that vocabulary, knowing what those words use, because the more they know what the words use, the more they can be better with the word usage. So sometimes when we hear certain words, it sounds like it might fit in that sentence, but when you really hear the definition and what it actually means, is maybe that was the wrong word to use. So I've really been practicing, searching up words on the web, because I really want them to get that technology exposure, and also searching up words in a dictionary, back to the old way of how things need to go. I feel like scholars need to know both ways, and also them listening to me when I give them vocabulary before we started reading. They have those 3 ways and those 3 resources of how to get the meanings of those definitions so they can properly use these words. So pragmatics is probably more so those social cues, how somebody is sitting, the tone, how you're hearing it. So pragmatics really talks about in regards to what is the context of what is being used, that body language, that tone, how are you hearing it? Is this alarming? Are you being soft? Are you trying to show a sense? Are you using a tone that's more kind? Are you using a tone that's more serious? What what is your body language in regards to how it's affecting your tone and your voice, and how you're retrieving that information and language is coming out of you. Like, how is the other person on the other side, how are we receiving that, and things like that. So pragmatics is very important, because you can be saying the same thing, but the tone can definitely change the delivery. Like, is the person aggravated? Is the person happy? Is the person sad? That tone can change from a lot of different things. So I like to practice facial expressions and delivery with my students, and constantly redoing it, especially in our small groups. So my exceptional learners, dealing with them in regards to going through this entire process, I know everyone learns differently, and really knowing how my scholars really want to, learn, receive information. It all can be different. So I have to be very diverse with how I give the information out, whether it comes to visuals, chunking the information, repetition, being another resource, repeating the questions and repeating this, rereading them, maybe reading with them, or maybe they have read alouds. Like, making sure that my classroom is very diverse, because each scholar may get the information that I'm trying to teach in different ways, and I don't want to just corner all my scholars into one lane and then teach it one way, because every scholar is different and unique, and those should be used as strengths and not weaknesses. Some instructional strategies I like to use is, visual, have a lot of anchor charts, giving my scholars that extra support in regards to rhyming practice, syllable clapping, or even, the interactive read aloud. Those are very helpful for my students. Also, just making sure they're very much engaged, giving them extra support, whether it's like shorter sentences, even some sentence stems to give them like activated. I love to close this webinar by saying, like, all 5 areas work together. You can't really have one solid foundation without the other. They all depend on the other. They all are very much connected. They all help our reading, our speaking, our listening, our communication, in all regards to communication literacy, especially for those little learners. They all connect, and teachers cannot neglect one area without fully giving their full and their all to all components.